The world was teetering on the edge of chaos, shadows lurking behind the facade of a thunderous war that scarred the earth and its people. As bombs rained down and armies clashed in theaters of horror, a clandestine race was quietly unfolding beneath the surface, hidden from the eyes of the world, yet pulsating with the potential to tilt the balance of power forever. In the depths of Nazi Germany, a secret effort was underway, one that sought not just to win the war, but to wield a weapon that could redefine reality itself. Deep within fortified laboratories, shielded by layers of obscurity and the iron will of those who believed in a distorted vision of victory, scientists toiled under veiled illumination. They knew that conventional warfare was insufficient, a war of attrition, of supply and brute force. No, this endeavor aimed higher, beyond the horizon of known science, into the realm of the unimaginable. They called it the Uran Project, a clandestine project driven by desperation, ambition, and a belief that the Führer's destiny depended on mastering the atom. These scientists, often driven by ideology more than morality, worked with relentless determination, pioneering discoveries that echoed faintly of hope and peril intertwined. Initial breakthroughs surfaced amid a storm of secrecy. Experimental piles powered by uranium, theories booming about chain reactions, and the possibility of unleashing energy so devastating that it could obliterate entire cities in an instant. They whispered about splitting the atom, about harnessing the very fabric of matter to produce a weapon of unparalleled magnitude, a bomb that could cast a shadow over the entire world. Meanwhile, the Allies were not blind to these whispers. Across the Atlantic and beyond, intelligence agencies scrambled to decode intercepted communications, spy reports, and coded messages sent from the depths of the Reich. The cracks in the Nazi fortress were becoming evident, yet the full extent of their nuclear ambitions remained treacherously cloaked in secrecy. The Allied forces knew that time was a cruel adversary, and every moment that the Nazi scientists advanced their research brought chaos closer and closer to reality. As the days turned into fraught nights, a sense of urgency gripped the intelligence communities. The race was no longer merely for victory on the battlefield but for the survival of humanity as it was known. The question haunted the minds of strategists and scientists alike. What if the Nazis succeeded where everyone else feared to tread? What if they completed the bomb first? Would the world even have a chance to stand against such annihilation? The thought was apocalyptic, and it propelled clandestine operations into hyperdrive, fueling daring espionage missions, secret sabotage, and covert exchanges. The timeline grew tighter with each passing day. Reports suggested that the Germans might be on the brink of a breakthrough, an experimental device that could potentially trigger an atomic explosion. Desperation mingled with determination, fueling a clandestine alliance among the Allies to outpace their enemies. The stakes couldn't be higher, an existential gamble where failure meant extermination, and victory could usher in either peace or unthinkable destruction. In the shadows of this high-stakes conspiracy, the stories of individuals emerged. Scientists tormented by moral dilemmas, spies risking their lives in silent defiance, and leaders contemplating whether reaching the bomb in time was worth the moral decay it entailed. All the while, the Nazi scientists pushed onward, cloaked behind false hopes, secret experiments, and a burning zeal fueled by a ruthless ideology. They believed, despite the evidence of international opposition and chaos, that they held the key to history's ultimate weapon. And so, the first chapter of this deadly race begins, an intensive pursuit of knowledge, power, and survival. It's a story of ambition and hubris, of humanity's relentless push towards the brink of destruction. An ancient dance in a new guise, where the stakes have never been higher, and the outcome remains uncertain. What if, In a world teetering on the precipice of apocalypse, the Nazis had succeeded. The consequences inscribed into the fabric of history, waiting silently, in the shadows, to be unleashed. The race was on, and the world could only hold its breath. In the shadowed depths of a remote testing site, somewhere hidden from the eyes of the world yet pulsating with the ominous hum of scientific fervor, a strange stillness pervaded. The air was thick, not just with the tension of anticipation but with the unspoken weight of history teetering on the edge of annihilation. Soldiers and scientists moved with a purpose that betrayed neither excitement nor fear, only a quiet, relentless determination. The moment drew near, a culmination of relentless effort, secret calculations, and unholy ambition. Then, suddenly, a blinding flash ripped through the darkness. A searing light that split the night sky apart, blossoming like a terrible flower into a cascade of destructive energy. The colossal explosion illuminated the horizon in an incandescent glow, a firestorm of unprecedented power. It was the first atomic blast, a silent harbinger of profound change that would forever alter the course of history. From miles away, the world watched, trembling on the precipice of a new era. News of this surge of raw, unfathomable force spread swiftly, shocking, terrifying, almost surreal. Headlines blared across every continent. Nazi Germany achieves atomic victory, a new dawn of power, the weapon of absolute supremacy. Governments scrambled, intelligence agencies delved into secret reports, and whispers of dread echoed through diplomatic halls. This was no ordinary conquest. It was an apocalyptic leap in military technology. A weapon capable of decimating entire cities with a single blast, wielded by a regime bent on domination. The global balance was shattered in an instant. The Nazi regime, basking in their nuclear triumph, revealed their new engine of terror and conquest. Their demonstrations became stark displays of superiority, missiles streaking into the sky, detonating in awe-inspiring, devastating explosions. Military parades now showcased not just discipline, but raw, unimaginable power. Nazi soldiers, draped in their ironclad uniforms, looked on with a mix of pride and menace, knowing the world was entering an era where the superweapon dictated the very fabric of global diplomacy. Allies and enemies alike stared into the abyss, their alliances fraying as trust diminished under the weight of nuclear dread. This nuclear breakthrough upended the fragile web of diplomacy that had held the world together. Alliances, historically geometric and predictable, bent beneath the pressure of this new dynamic. Britain, France, and the United States, longtime adversaries, began frantically re-evaluating their strategies, knowing that conventional warfare was now dwarfed by the threat of annihilation. Suddenly, the nuclear thunderstorm cast its shadow over every negotiation, every whisper of peace, compelling new pacts and clandestine agreements aimed solely at survival. The atomic era emerged from the darkness as a terrifying equalizer. Any power daring to challenge Nazi supremacy faced the devastating potential of destruction. This shift shifted not only military strategies but fundamentally redefined global power structures. The Nazi victory in wielding this devastating force became a symbol of their unchecked supremacy, their narrative of racial and ideological superiority reinforced by the unassailable coldness of nuclear might. The world was gripped in a silent dread that their enemies could no longer overpower them through traditional means. Instead, they would be obliterated by the very weapons they feared most. The old alliances crumbled under this weight, replaced by strategies of secrecy and nuclear deterrence. Nations hoarded their own arsenals, built underground bunkers, and entered into shadowy negotiations, tiptoeing around the threat that hung like an active volcano waiting to erupt. And yet, beneath the surface of this tense stalemate, resistance flickered in the shadows. Whispered plans for clandestine alliances, secret sabotage, and hopes for a final stand persisted despite the ever-present nuclear specter. The Nazi regime's demonstration of power sent shockwaves through every corner of the globe, igniting a fiery debate. How to face this new, terrifying form of warfare that rendered traditional courage and combat obsolete. It was no longer enough to build armies. Now, nations had to contend with the horror of their own potential obliteration, creating a fear that paralyzed, galvanized, and divided. The course of the war, and perhaps history, had been irrevocably altered. The advent of nuclear power in Nazi hands positioned them not just as a formidable adversary but as the harbingers of an apocalyptic future. Their demonstration of strength, a visceral, explosive spectacle, became a chilling reminder of humanity's capacity for destruction. The question lingered ominously: how could the world fight an enemy wielding such divine-level devastation? Would the old rules of engagement hold, or would the world succumb to the nihilism that nuclear weapons cast on the horizon? The answer waited in the shadows, in the unseen corridors of diplomacy, resistance, and desperation. As the world stared into this abyss, the question of morality, survival, and power hung in the balance. The Nazi regime's march into nuclear supremacy turned the war into a terrifying chess game, where each pawn's move could spell extinction. The weapons that had once been confined to science fiction had now become the grim reality, checking the world's conscience, testing its resolve, and rewriting the very essence of what it meant to fight for the future. In this new era of unimaginable power, alliances were no longer just political bonds. They were lifelines, fragile and fleeting, woven into a tapestry now stained by the dark shadow of nuclear supremacy. In the shadowed hour of dimming hope, the world shifts under an oppressive dominion. The Nazis, relentless in their surge, carve a relentless path across continents, their armies swift and unyielding. Countries that once stood as bastions of resistance now exist as silent, subjugated pawns in a grand choreography of conquest. From the icy reaches of Scandinavia to the sun-drenched shores of the Mediterranean, their banners unfurl with ruthless authority. The swift occupation of vital nations, places once fiercely defended, sends a chilling message. Resistance is futile. The world is succumbing to their iron grip. In the silence of the occupied streets, resistance whispers in shadows. Underground networks, once vibrant with ambition, are now trembling shells of their former selves. The Nazi overlords, armed with brutality and meticulous intelligence, swiftly crush the faintest flicker of rebellion. Former leaders, thinkers, and fighters are pulled from their hiding spots, their voices silenced or broken. Propaganda floods the airwaves, drowning out any spark of dissent with the lie that this new order is inevitable, even justified. The occupied populations, faced with the might of the state and the ever-present threat of brutal reprisals, are paralyzed by fear. Yet, beneath the veneer of surrender, a different game is played in secret chambers and hidden basements. Small pockets of resistance press on, driven by a desperate hope that sparks can still be ignited amidst darkness. Despite the overwhelming power of the Nazi machine, their spirit remains unbroken in some quarters. They plan, they hide, they wait for moments of weakness, for cracks in the seemingly invincible facade. The cost is immense. Friends betrayed, loved ones disappeared overnight. But the flame of defiance refuses to die. What does this new reality mean for those fighting within the occupied territories? The answer is as stark and complex as the moment itself. For many, it means a shift from open rebellion to clandestine warfare, from visible defiance to silent sabotage. Resistance becomes an act of resilience in whispers, in coded messages passed under the noses of patrols, in clandestine gatherings in cellar rooms dimly lit by flickering candles. Every act of resistance, however small, becomes revolutionary. A sabotaged rail line here, a smuggled pamphlet there, a whispered warning to a neighbor. These are fateful ripples in a pond now dominated by a ruthless tide. But the Nazi victory does more than suppress, it transforms. It erodes the very fabric of society, rewriting the rules of loyalty and fear. Ordinary citizens, coerced into collaboration or paralyzed by trepidation, walk the tightrope of survival. Some submit outwardly, only to nurture quiet resentment. Others choose to resist silently, knowing the cost may be their lives or the lives of loved ones. Resistance fighters find new ways to blend into the populace, becoming ghosts haunting the occupied streets. Their existence is a constant gamble between discovery and perseverance, between the hope of eventual liberation and the chilling reality of the present. As the pillars of resistance weaken, the Nazi regime tightens its grip, reinforcing control with brutal efficiency. Thought police, informants, and harsh laws ensure that dissent does not re-emerge into the open. The occupied territories become cities of shadows, where fear lurks at every corner, and trust is a fragile illusion. Every handshake might be watched, every whispered conversation a potential betrayal. Within this landscape of despair, the question persists: is resistance still possible? Can the human spirit survive amid the crushing weight of oppression? For some, the answer is a resolute yes. They cling to memories of freedom, to stories handed down through generations, and to the unbreakable belief that this darkness is temporary. They know that history has shown, time and again, that no tyranny is everlasting. Yet, the path is treacherous, littered with sacrifices and the constant danger of discovery. And so, amidst the ruins of former worlds, underground movements pulse with quiet defiance. They operate in secrecy, fueled by hope and driven by an unyielding desire for liberation. Their courage is not the absence of fear but the mastery over it. Every act of resistance becomes a silent scream into the void, one that echoes through the corridors of power, a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to be erased. In the midst of this oppressive New World Order, the resistance's resilience becomes a fragile yet unbreakable thread woven into the fabric of collective memory. It whispers that even in the darkest times, there are sparks that refuse to die out. As the Nazi regime consolidates its power, the question remains: when the dawn will come, and whether enough of the human spirit will survive to see it. The shadows may lengthen, their grip tightening, but hope, though battered, still flickers in the hearts of those who refuse to accept the might of the conquerors as absolute. Resistance is not dead, it is merely buried, waiting for the moment it can rise again, in whispers and shadows, in secret and silence, until the world wakes from its nightmare. As the shadows of war darken the global horizon, the Americas find themselves caught in an invisible web of intrigue and peril. The distant thunder of marching armies in Europe echoes across the Atlantic, but the threat isn't confined to distant shores, it's creeping closer, insidiously infiltrating from the supposed safety of the New World. From the lush jungles of South America to the bustling cities of North America, an undercurrent of suspicion runs deep, stirring fears that Axis powers have already begun their clandestine conquest. In the rainforests of Argentina and Brazil, whispers tell of secret meetings, of German emissaries weaving themselves into local politics, trying to forge alliances that would sway the continent to the Axis cause. The reach of Nazi influence stretches beyond mere espionage. It extends into the realm of possibilities, covert operations that seek to destabilize, to turn the Americas into fertile ground for Axis expansion. Diplomatic channels are being shadowed, covert networks established under the guise of diplomacy, their true intentions masked behind layers of deception. Meanwhile, in the north, beneath the shimmering surface of everyday life, clandestine activities thrive in the shadows of North American cities. Intelligence agencies are battling to unearth the silent whispers of espionage. German agents embedded deep within societies, exchanging coded messages through seemingly innocent purchases and subtle gestures. Nervous eyes scan the horizon, questioning who might be friend or foe, for the lines between ally and enemy blur in times of crisis. The possibility of alliances looms large, fascist regimes beyond the Atlantic, mired in their own ideological pursuits but recognizing the strategic advantage of uniting with their more powerful German and Italian counterparts. With mutual interests in sabotaging Allied efforts and destabilizing democratic nations, these potential partnerships threaten to tip the balance. Would Mexico, with its complex political landscape, slip into the Axis orbit? Could Venezuela or Cuba be coaxed into folding their allegiance into the Axis fold through covert influence? The few who know the extent of these maneuvers are haunted by the question: are the Americas destined to become the next battleground? The mounting danger raises a stark question among the Allies. Could the Allied forces mount a counteroffensive capable of halting this creeping tide? The Atlantic, once a barrier of vast distance, feels increasingly like a thin membrane, vulnerable to infiltration and manipulation. The United States, fortified yet cautious, grapples with the threat of internal sabotage, knowing that enemies might already be lurking within, disguised and untraceable. Intelligence agencies race to piece together the puzzle, tracing unusual trade routes, intercepting encrypted messages, pursuing leads that may be mere shadows of truth. Across the ocean, the Axis powers strategize in secret, their gaze fixed on the Americas as a vital frontier. Every covert operation, every whispered promise of alliance, is calculated to weaken the Allied front and expand their reach. The name of the game is subtlety, disguise, deception, and psychological warfare. They leverage propaganda, exploiting divisions within American societies, whispering false truths into the ears of susceptible factions. Could they succeed? Could the Axis, with its cunning and ruthlessness, breach the American defenses and carve out a sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere? In the midst of this, the question persists: can the Allies respond decisively? Can they anticipate the shadowy maneuvers and cut off the Axis's potential alliances before they solidify? The echoes of history warn that complacency is deadly, that silent, unseen enemies can be more dangerous than the overt armies marching into battle. The United States and its allies must remain vigilant, each intercepted code, each disrupted operation, a testament to their resilience. But the more they uncover, the clearer it becomes that the threat is not just military but psychological, a battle of influence, trust, and patriotism. As night falls over these critical zones, the weight of uncertainty presses down like an oppressive fog. Every move, every piece of intelligence, could tilt the balance, decisively or disastrously. The question lingers: could the Allies mount a counteroffensive before the Axis's web of deception tightens further? Or has the continent already begun to fall asleep under a false sense of security, unaware that the shadow of war is already crawling beneath their feet, waiting to strike? The answer remains hidden, lurking behind closed doors and encrypted messages, whispering the silent, chilling truth. Sometimes, the greatest threats are those we cannot see. In the shadowed corridors of history, beneath the veneer of scientific triumphs, lay a relentless pursuit of dominance, a world reshaped by the relentless march of technology under the Nazi regime. The air is thick with the hum of engines and the silent whispers of breakthroughs that promised to redefine humanity's place in the universe, but at what cost? The Nazis, driven by an insatiable thirst for power, had harnessed scientific progress not for enlightenment, but for conquest, forging a dark empire where technological supremacy became both weapon and warning. They had cracked the secrets of missile technology, transforming their military arsenals into nearly unstoppable forces. V-2 rockets, specters of terror that soared beyond the atmosphere, capable of striking distant targets with lethal precision, marked a leap forward. These missiles were no longer mere projectiles. They were the precursors of a new era of warfare, where destruction could be delivered from the reaches of space, transforming the battlefield into a theater of the infinite. Each launch was a testament to the regime's obsession with control, their scientists relentlessly pushing the boundaries of physics and engineering, welding theory and destruction into a symphony of terror. Parallel to this, the space race was no longer a distant dream. It was a formidable battlefield of ideologies and technology. The Nazi scientific minds looked upward, ambitious to claim the cosmos for their own. Space was no longer the final frontier. It was the next domain of supremacy, a new realm to dominate, exploit, and militarize. The night skies became a canvas of innovation and hubris, with launches that whispered promises of colonies and conquest among the stars. Yet behind these marvels lay unsettling truths. That the humiliating scars of war and genocide fueled the relentless drive, each advancement built atop the ashes of moral restraint. Central to these dark achievements was the exploitation of Einstein's theories, twisted to serve a military purpose. Einstein, a symbol of genius and hope, had been exploited to develop weaponized science, his equations co-opted to enhance weapons of staggering destructive power. The regime's scientists, cloaked in secrecy, worked tirelessly to turn relativity into a tool of war, pushing the limits of physics to craft nuclear devices that threatened to unleash apocalyptic destruction. Atomic research, once a pursuit of cosmic understanding, had become a weapon of mass annihilation, a silent menace lurking behind the veneer of technological progress. As these advances grew more sophisticated, questions of sustainability and morality darkened the conversation. How long could this scientific dominance endure? Was this a fleeting period of power fueled by brutal suppression and the suppression of dissent, or did it herald a new era, one where technological superiority could perpetually be maintained? The regime's relentless quest for innovation seemed to be battling the inherent fragility of the moral fabric of their pursuits. Every missile launched, every satellite sent into orbit, carried within it the seed of potential catastrophe, both for enemies and for themselves. The sustainability of Nazi technological supremacy was inherently fragile, tethered to ideology rooted in fear, brutality, and denial. Their scientific endeavors, impressive as they were, rested on shaky foundations, an unstable alliance between genius and madness, innovation and destruction. History whispers warnings, embodied in the crumbling of their empire, in the fall of their once invincible military technology, and in the lessons of hubris that echo across time. Their advancements, while breathtaking, were built on a house of cards, designed not only for dominance but also for inevitable collapse. In this dark mirror of progress, the question persists. Can such a scientific and technological tyranny ever be sustainable? Or is it doomed to fall under the weight of its own moral bankruptcy? The shadow of the Third Reich looms in the background, a stark reminder that the pursuit of such heights often leads to despair. Their achievements, vast and terrifying, were as much a monument to human ingenuity as a warning, a testament that unchecked technological power, wielded without conscience, is a perishable fruit, destined to rot from within. The narrative now turns toward the quiet aftermath, where these dark achievements are examined and mourned. Their legacy is a complex tapestry woven with threads of brilliance and barbarity, innovation and annihilation. It challenges us to reflect. Is our own pursuit of scientific progress any different? Are we, in our quest to conquer space and harness the atom, echoing their dreams or their downfall? The question lingers, unsettling. How sustainable is our own technological dominance in a world teetering on the brink of chaos? And as the shadows deepen, the echoes of their ambition call out, reminding us that the path to the stars may be paved with terrible costs, and that the true measure of progress lies not just in achievement, but in the moral will to wield it responsibly. The night sky, once a frontier of hope, remains haunted by their ghosts, specters of science misused, echoing the timeless lesson that the pursuit of power must always be tempered with humility, lest we inherit the darkness they never escaped. In the shadows of a world consumed by darkness, where every whispered secret could mean life or death, a silent war rages beneath the surface of the Nazi regime. The air is thick with tension as brave souls, cloaked in secrecy, ignite flickers of hope amidst despair. They move quietly through the twisted alleys of occupied territories, their footsteps mindful of every sound, every gaze, knowing that even the slightest mistake could unravel months of painstaking effort. Hidden cellars and covert meeting points serve as sanctuaries for those who refuse to surrender to the oppressive grip of tyranny. Within these clandestine walls, an intricate tapestry of resistance unfolds, an audacious dance of deception, courage, and clandestine defiance. These underground movements are not merely whispers of rebellion but calculated acts of sabotage that threaten to destabilize the very foundation of Nazi power. They are the sparks that, if nurtured, could ignite a larger uprising, a true reflection of humanity's unyielding will to survive. In the dim light of a nondescript basement, a group of resistance fighters meticulously plans their next move. Their leader, their voice steady but fierce, outlines a mission to disable a crucial supply depot heavily guarded by the enemy. Every detail is scrutinized, every risk weighed with precision. They know that success could ripple through occupied territories, inspiring others to rise from the shadows. Failure, however, could mean exposure, torture, or death. Still, in the face of these insurmountable odds, they press on, driven by an unbreakable conviction that resistance is their obligation, and their hope. Meanwhile, spies operate with deadly intelligence in the enemy's heartland, embedded amongst civilians who are just as frightened as they are brave. They gather whispers, snippets of plans and fears, transmitting their findings through secret channels. Their role is perilous, an ever-present threat of betrayal hanging in the air, yet their resolve sustains them. They are the unseen eyes and ears, piercing through the facade of order created by the regime, sowing chaos in the shadows of the enemy's own structure. As sabotage operations occur with brutal precision, explosions tearing through supply convoys, bridges sabotaged beneath the cover of night, the grim reality becomes even clearer. These acts aren't random. They're strategic strikes against the machinery of oppression. Each act of sabotage weakens the Nazi grip, erodes morale, and demonstrates that resilience can exist even in the bleakest circumstances. Such chaos stretches the regime's resources thin, forcing them to divert attention and manpower from their brutal crusade. It's a slow-burning rebellion, a seed of insurrection that refuses to be stamped out. Yet, with each daring mission, danger grows more imminent. Gestapo patrols become increasingly cunning, searching for the infamous disruptors who threaten their meticulously crafted order. The resistance fighters know that staying hidden is their greatest weapon, that their survival hinges on deception, on the calculated use of false identities, encrypted messages, and secret signals. They live in a constant state of anticipation, knowing that even a single misstep could summon the full fury of the regime. The line between life and death blurs as they walk this razor's edge. Amidst the chaos, daring spy missions often cross into enemy territory, missions that could tip the balance of power. One such operation involves infiltrating a high-security communication center to intercept vital intel. The operative, cloaked in darkness, navigates gauntlet-like corridors under the constant threat of detection, relying on cunning and resourcefulness. With each successful penetration, vital information is transmitted back, supplying the resistance with the intelligence needed to plan their next strike. It's a fragile game of chess played in the shadows, where one move could spell victory or doom. The resilience of these men and women is a testament to a moral fire that refuses to be extinguished. They carry the weight of countless lives on their shoulders, driven by memories of loved ones lost and a future they desperately cling to. A future where tyranny is overthrown, and humanity is reclaimed. Their sacrifices are profound, yet they are often invisible to the world outside these secret enclaves. To the outside observer, they might be just mere spectators in history's dark chapter, but to themselves, they are the very essence of resistance, beacons of light in an unforgiving darkness. The question that hangs heavy in the air as night falls over these clandestine operations is whether their efforts can truly turn the tide. Will these sparks of rebellion ignite a conflagration that consumes the regime's hold? Or will oppression snuff out their flickering flame before it has a chance to grow? Every raid, every stolen document, every explosion is a gamble, each with the potential to shift the course of history. In the quiet moments after the chaos of a successful sabotage, there is a fleeting sense of hope. A realization that perhaps their actions, however small they seem, are adding up, pieces in a broader puzzle that might someday culminate in liberation. Yet, even as they cling to this hope, reality bites back. They are constantly hunted, betrayed, and pushed to the brink of despair. Their resilience is a fragile shield against the relentless machinery of death and control. As dawn approaches, the resistance fighters prepare to dissolve into the shadows once again, knowing that their fight is far from over. For every victory, the enemy retaliates with brutal vengeance, and yet their spirit remains unbroken. Their mission continues, a testament to the unwavering human desire for freedom, justice, and a future beyond darkness. The minds behind these operations ask themselves every day, with urgent whisperings and hushed fears, whether the collective effort can crack the armor of tyranny and tip the scales back toward hope. And in this perpetual struggle, unseen by many, the line between heroism and treachery blurs. Each act of resistance is a defiant cry in the void, each spy's secret message a fragile lifeline. They gamble everything in the shadows, driven by the unyielding belief that resistance, no matter how covert or perilous, is ultimately a revolutionary act. The question remains: can these rebels, these clandestine warriors, turn the tide? Or are they merely defiant whispers silenced forever in the dark? Therein lies the enduring mystery, the hope that ekes through every crack of silence. That even in the deepest shadows, a spark of resistance can grow into a blaze capable of burning down the walls of tyranny itself. The shadows of history stretch long and dark, yet some truths refuse to fade into obscurity. In the aftermath of chaos, a question echoes through the void, a haunting whisper that demands to be heard. What is the moral price of nuclear dominance? As the world teetered on the edge of moral abyss, an era of unspeakable atrocities under the guise of progress unfolded, painting a bleak landscape riddled with pain, loss, and remorse. In the shadowed corridors of power, the Nazi regime's insatiable hunger for dominance spiraled into a torrent of brutality. The Holocaust, an atrocity etched into the collective conscience, was but a fragment of their monstrous ambitions. As their grip tightened, so did their determination to forge a new world order, one carved with destruction and fear. It was amid this relentless expansion that the reality of nuclear weaponry loomed, an instrument of unparalleled devastation that could extinguish entire civilizations in a single flash. Nazi scientists, driven by a perverse sense of destiny, accelerated their work on nuclear technology, viewing it as the ultimate tool to impose their supremacist vision. Behind closed doors, they pushed the boundaries of morality, delving into forbidden realms of science. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, resistance forces and innocent civilians endured the horrors of intensified assaults. Entire cities turned to ash in nuclear strikes, their screams swallowed by the inferno. Resistance hubs, once vibrant centers of defiance, became smoldering ruins, testaments to mankind's capacity for destruction. The human toll was staggering. Families torn apart, communities annihilated overnight, and countless lives reduced to ash and memory. Mothers lost their children in the blink of an eye. Fathers watched powerless as their loved ones dissolved into radioactive dust. These images, etched into the psyche of survivors, became part of a dark tapestry woven through history's most brutal chapters. But the atrocities weren't confined to the battlefield. The Nazis extended their reach into every corner of occupied territories, carrying out mass executions, biological experiments, and racial purges, all under a veneer of scientific progress. Their inhumane experiments left scars of suffering so profound that they continue to echo across generations. The world watched in horror as the moral boundaries dissolved, where scientific curiosity transformed into cruel psychopathology. As the war raged, other nations, driven by fear and a desire for strategic dominance, retaliated with their own nuclear arsenals. The Cold War loomed, a specter embodying humanity's collective descent into a nuclear nightmare. Countries stockpiled weapons, convinced that power equated safety, but at what cost? The threat of annihilation was no longer hypothetical. It was an ever-present shadow lurking in every negotiation, every secret meeting. Unthinkable atrocities unfolded on a global scale. Cities in Asia, Europe, and America became targets of strategic strikes, each explosion unearthing the depths of humanity's capacity for destruction. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, though later seen as a horrific necessity by some, exposed the horrifying truth. Nuclear weapons could erase entire civilizations within moments. The aftermath, the radiation, the survivors scarred for life, the unrelenting grief, highlighted the irreversible toll that such weapons exacted on human life. This grim reality forces us to ask, what is the moral price of nuclear dominance? Is it worth sacrificing our collective humanity for fleeting notions of power and security? The temptation to wield such destructive power often clouds rational judgment, leading nations down a path where morality is sacrificed on the altar of strategic advantage. The unbearable truth emerges. Those who seek to dominate with nuclear might do so at a tremendous cost: their own souls, and the souls of generations yet unborn. To truly comprehend this cost, one must look beyond the political and military narratives. It's essential to understand the stories of those who suffered, those whose voices have been silenced by silence or history's indifference. The survivors' accounts reveal a universe of pain, stories of lost childhoods, fractured families, and shattered faith in humanity. Their pain is a testament to the enduring moral wound inflicted when humanity chooses destruction over compassion, violence over reconciliation. In every nuclear detonation there is a paradox: the pursuit of strength that leads to ultimate vulnerability. The more nations seek to assert dominance through destruction, the more they expose their own fragility. The world, perched precariously on the edge of catastrophe, bears witness to this tragic cycle, one that repeats itself in different forms, but always rooted in the same fundamental question: how much are we willing to sacrifice in the name of security? As the dust settles from these devastating acts, the world is left to grapple with the residues of its moral failure. The scars of nuclear war have not only altered landscapes but have also scarred the collective conscience of humanity. The cold, sterile truth emerges: the knowledge that some atrocities committed in the name of science, war, and progress have permanently tainted our moral fabric. Yet, within this darkness, a glimmer of reflection emerges. It is a call to confront the uncomfortable truths of our history, to reckon with the costs of our pursuit of power. For it is only through acknowledgement that we can hope to heal and forge a future rooted in humility, wisdom, and compassion. The real question remains: can we learn from these horrors, or are we doomed to repeat them, forever haunted by the echoes of a past we refused to confront? As the camera lingers on deserted landscapes, haunted by ghostly echoes of the past, the voice asks again: what is the moral price of nuclear dominance? The answer is written in the scars we cannot erase, in the stories of those who endured, and in the quiet hope that one day, humanity will choose a different path. One where the pursuit of greatness does not come at the expense of our soul's humanity. As the world teeters on the edge of abyss, the fragile veneer of diplomacy shatters into shards of distrust and fury. The global stage transforms into a twisted chessboard, where the pieces, nations long entangled in their own ambitions, brace for a lethal game that demands no mercy. Counter-alliances surge in the shadows, revealing secret pacts and whispered promises that send ripples of dread through the corridors of power. Countries once wary of each other now find themselves bound by a desperate need for survival, forging unlikely alliances that crumble the old world order with every passing day. In the northern cities, fortified bunkers and missile silos swell with tension. The air thickens with the scent of paranoia as leaders shuffle through war rooms, their faces drawn and gaunt from sleepless nights. Intelligence reports flicker across screens, warning of imminent threats, of escalating nuclear proliferation, of the rapid upgrades in arsenals that threaten to spiral beyond control. The fear is palpable, a silent pandemic infecting every decision, every command, every hope for peace. The specter of nuclear annihilation hovers like a relentless storm cloud, blackening the horizons of the mind and the planet alike. Across oceans and continents, theaters of war ignite in chaos and despair. In the deserts of the Middle East, clashing armies jostle with the chaos of emerging drones and cyber warfare, their conflicts punctuated by the ominous rumble of missile launches. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, trembling nations brace for the inevitable, their borders lines drawn not just on maps but deep within their collective consciousness, haunted by the specter of nuclear devastation. From the dense jungles of Southeast Asia to the icy stretches of Siberia, regions erupt into conflicts fueled by resource desperation, ideological divides, and a profound sense of existential dread. The Internet, once a tool for connection and progress, now pulses with chaos. Propaganda floods social media, sowing discord, inflaming fears of betrayal, reinforcing the madness that grips the world. Fake news circulates alongside shut-off communications, creating a maddening blur, a cacophony of half-truths and outright lies, fueling suspicion and paranoia among nations and individuals alike. The collective psyche is fraying, as humanity grapples with the terrifying realization that the tools meant to safeguard them could, in an instant, erase everything. And amidst this maelstrom, the ultimate question gnaws at the conscience of every observer. Could humanity withstand this nuclear nightmare? The very foundation of civilization trembles under the weight of its own destructive potential. Every nuclear test, every missile launched, echoes like a death knell for innocence. Those in command dwell in fortified enclaves, their fingers poised over buttons that could end worlds, their minds haunted by visions of obliteration. Civilians, caught in the relentless crossfire, cling to fragile hopes of survival, uncertain whether the dawn will bring salvation or a final, irreversible darkness. The clock ticks down, seconds that stretch like eternity, toward an unthinkable crescendo. Humanity's history, marked by moments of innovation and growth, now threatens to culminate in a catastrophic symphony composed by its own hubris. Each act of escalation pushes the world closer to the edge, a collective leap into chaos that may be impossible to halt. The very fabric of life, woven with dreams, love, and aspirations, unravels under the relentless pressure of nuclear dread. Yet, amid the devastation and despair, faint whispers of resilience emerge: individuals, communities, leaders who refuse to surrender to despair. Their stories, fragile yet fierce, remind us that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit clings desperately to hope. For no matter how close the abyss looms, the question remains: can this battered world find a way back from the brink? Or is this the final chapter in humanity's story, written in radioactive ink, a testament to its own self-destruction? As the shadows deepen, the answer teeters on the razor's edge, waiting to be unveiled in the chapters yet to come. In the faint glow of a dying sun, a world once vibrant now lies shrouded in an ominous silence, the remnants of humanity buried beneath a pall of ash and despair. The nuclear dawn has come and gone, leaving behind a landscape scarred beyond recognition, cities reduced to ghostly skeletons, forests turned to barren wastelands, oceans turned toxic and unrecognizable. All around, a haunting echo of the horror that once was, a testament to the catastrophic power humanity wielded and ultimately lost control over. In the shadows of a crumbling metropolis, fissures streak the ground as if attempting to swallow what remains of civilization. The air hangs heavy with a toxic haze, both a literal and symbolic veil that obscures hope. Somewhere in this wasteland, a solitary figure trudges forward, clutching a piece of fractured metal, perhaps a remnant of a radio, a symbol of the attempts at communication, at survival. Every step is shrouded in silence, broken only by the distant, haunting echoes of an earth torn apart. The specter of mutual assured destruction haunts every corner of this devastated world. The nuclear arms race, once a cold threat, a fragile balance of power, finally tipped into annihilation. Each side, locked in a deadly game of brinkmanship, pressed buttons in the dark, unleashing a chain reaction of doom. Cities turned to dust within seconds, populations vaporized, memories erased by blinding flashes and monstrous shockwaves. The world was turned into a radioactive wasteland, no winner, only ruins and regret. But the environmental catastrophe was more insidious than any blast. Radioactive fallout blanketed the earth, seeping into soil, water, and air. Mutant flora and fauna emerged in grotesque forms, a testament to nature's twisted resilience. The oceans blackened, their toxic depths no longer supporting life but instead serving as graves for entire marine ecosystems. Climate patterns spiraled into chaos. Storms raged uncontrollably, and what little sunlight penetrated the clouds was tainted with radioactive particles, a permanent reminder of humanity's hubris. Societal collapse followed swiftly behind this devastation. Governments toppled, chaos reigned, and the fragile threads of civilization unraveled. Humanity, stripped of its infrastructure, its morals, its sense of order, devolved into scattered groups, some hostile, others desperately searching for remnants of what once was. In this fractured world, trust was a relic, and violence was the currency for survival. The moral compass had been shattered along with the world that spawned it, each day a struggle not just against the environment, but against humanity's own darkest impulses. Yet amid the ruins, faint whispers of resistance and hope flicker like dying embers. Sparse groups of survivors cling to life, scavenging through debris, seeking connection, understanding that the fight is not yet over. Some believe intelligence might still endure, perhaps even resilience. They cling to stories of the past, lessons etched into their minds, that hint at a future beyond the devastation, questioning whether humanity's legacy can be truly lost. Now, at the edge of this abandoned world, what remains of the human spirit faces its greatest test. The question of whether there is hope for rebirth or if humanity's greed and hubris have sealed its fate forever. The question hangs in the toxic air like a specter. Can there be salvation in the ashes? Or is this the final chapter of a species that once reached for the stars only to fall into its own abyss? As the wind howls through deserted streets, an eerie, ghostly symphony, the answer feels elusive. Some envision a new beginning emerging from the radioactive seeds sown in destruction, believing that with time and effort, life can re-emerge from the scorched earth. Others see only despair, a future buried under layers of radioactive dust and moral decay, with humanity's hubris eternally haunting the ruins of its own creation. And so, the world on the brink lingers, neither entirely dead nor fully alive, a solemn testament to the devastating aftermath of nuclear warfare. The echoes of a civilization that once aspired to greatness now serve as a chilling reminder. The question remains whispered on the wind: will future generations learn from these scars? Or will history repeat itself, eternally caught in the cycle of destruction, the only legacy remaining a haunting echo of what never should have been? In the shadowed corridors of history's what-ifs, there lies a tale seldom told, an alternate timeline where humanity flirted dangerously with its own annihilation. Imagine a world where countries, driven by fear and ambition, abandoned the fragile dance of nuclear restraint, allowing their arsenals to grow unchecked. A world teetering on the edge of the abyss, where the boundaries between power and peril blurred into oblivion. In such a timeline, the lessons are stark, the warnings unmistakable, echoing through the corridors of time like a haunting refrain. This is a reflection on that dark future, a mirror held up to our present, forcing us to confront the shadows lurking beneath our veneer of progress. It's a journey through corridors filled with moral dilemmas, where leaders once chose destruction over diplomacy, where a single misstep could have ignited nuclear flames across the globe. What was lost in that alternate history was not just lives, but the very fabric of trust and hope that binds nations together. It serves as a grim reminder. The path to destruction is often paved with complacency, arrogance, and the failure to see beyond immediate gains. Imagine the ripple effects: every missile launched, every failed negotiation, a step closer to a catastrophe that could not be contained. The world, in its relentless pursuit of dominance, had dismantled the delicate structure of nuclear non-proliferation, a fragile framework that once prevented total annihilation. The lessons are seared into the collective consciousness. If humanity begins to see war, especially nuclear war, as an acceptable means to an end, then the darkness becomes inevitable, spilling over the horizons and engulfing everything in its path. This alternate scenario forces us to ask, what moral questions are embedded in the pursuit of nuclear weapons? Do the forsaken lives of civilians, the shattered cities, the lingering scars of radiation, not speak loudly enough? When states prioritize their sovereignty and security over global responsibility, where does that leave morality? If the history of the world had taken a darker turn, it would be a story filled with regret, a lament for the innocence lost, for the future sacrificed at the altar of power. History has shown us, more than once, that nuclear proliferation is a double-edged sword. The very technology designed to deter war can, in the wrong hands, become a tool of obliteration. The importance of holding onto principles of restraint and international cooperation cannot be overstated. The course of our real history teaches us that dialogue and diplomacy are the true safeguards against catastrophe, not vaults filled with deadly weapons. But in this dark future, those lessons were ignored, or perhaps never learned at all. Reflecting on this brings forth a chilling realization. The most horrifying lessons are often learned too late. We stand at a precipice. Do we heed the warnings, or do we falter, risking that we might end up in a reality far darker than the one we know? The choices of yesterday shape the world of tomorrow. If we fail to remember and respect the boundaries of morality and responsibility, history repeats its gravest errors. So, what can we learn? What must we internalize from this shadowed reflection, to keep our future from slipping into chaos? We learn that the pursuit of power must be tempered with wisdom and humility. That diplomacy and international treaties are not just formalities but vital lifelines that hold our fragile civilization together. That the true strength lies in unity and restraint, in recognizing our shared humanity rather than succumbing to divisions and fears. This reflection is not merely about fear of what could happen but about hope that awareness and action can steer us clear from the abyss. The lessons from this dark future are a stark reminder. History's darkest chapters are preventable. They are written when we allow our fears and ambitions to override our morals. But they can also be rewritten, with our commitment to peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding. As we look into this mirror of what-ifs, let it serve as a beacon, not just of warning, but of resolve. Our choices today will carve the path of tomorrow. The shadows we fear do not have to define us, but ignoring them makes us vulnerable. Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to learn, adapt, and choose dialogue over destruction. We must cultivate that strength now, before the echoes of this dark future become our reality. Because at the core of this reflection lies an undeniable truth. The future is always ours to shape. Let the lessons of a darker past become the guiding light for a safer, more conscientious world. For if we fail to remember and to act, the echoes we try to erase may become the voices that define our history, forever haunted by the lessons we refused to learn.